Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first stop of the AHDB Cereals and Oilseeds World Study Tour. Across the next 8 months, we'll be travelling virtually to different countries, seeing different farming systems and asking them how they are realistically adopting IPM. Tonight's talk has been especially popular. I think there's been over about 250 people signed up, so looking forward to seeing how it goes on. Tonight's webinar is also an exception to the theme of adopting IPM, as we seek to understand a bit more about how the war in Ukraine is affecting agriculture operations in the country and on farmers and processors in the UK. I'm Isabel Eames, and I'm the new Knowledge Exchange Manager for the North East. And tonight with me, we have Roman Slaston, who is the General Director of Ukrainian Agribusiness Club, Duncan Farrington, who is the Managing Director of Farrington Oils, and AHDB's very own Anthony Spade, who is Senior Analyst in the Arable team. Next slide, please, Christian. I'm just going to run through some general housekeeping notes to take note of. We can't hear or see you, unfortunately, so we won't be able to hear you at all. If you do have any questions or any technical problems, then there is a question box to the right-hand side of the screen, which you can post questions in, and also you can ask questions to the speakers throughout the webinar, and we'll answer them as we go along and as a panel session at the end. The questions are anonymous, and we can't see, no one else can see the questions apart from myself and the speakers. We are scheduled to be here until 8 o'clock tonight, until the panel session's finished and the final comments have been made. There are basis and Naroto points available, one for each organisation. And if you haven't already added your points when you signed up and added your details when you signed up, you can also post your membership number, name, postcode, and date of birth in the comments section on the right-hand side. And again, this is private, so only myself and the speakers can see this. This has also been recorded, so the recording will be available and sent to attendees within 48 hours. And it will also be uploaded to the AHDB's YouTube channel, which we also have a variety of past webinars on. The Twitter handles of all those involved in tonight's webinars are on the slide in front of you. If you feel like carrying the conversation on Twitter, then please do go ahead. Next slide, please, Christian. So before I start, just thought I'd draw your attention to the IPM's Decisions platform, which launched today. That's a Horizon 2020 project, and it's a decision support tool for IPM. I've been told that the registration process is quick and easy, and it just involves putting in your farm location and then selecting relevant decision support systems. This could include something like BYDV for winter wheat and winter barley. After that, users will then get direct access to information and guidance to aid management decisions, such as the risk status and just any guidance that they might give. So the number of pests and crops covered is expected to grow, but it currently covers 11 invertebrate pests and diseases. And if you do have any questions on this, as it's quite relatively new, or want to learn a bit more about it, then please do contact me. My details are going to be on the final slide.
Hello everyone, my name is Roman Slaston. I'm the General Director of Ukrainian Agribusiness Club. Sorry I wasn't able to join the webinar on Wednesday because of some tech problems, but we agreed with organizers that I will do some record for you to have some insights about what is going on in Ukraine with harvest, with planting campaign for the next season. So let's jump further to the figures. So regarding harvest of this year, for grains, we expect that it will be like 25% up to 30% less than it was next year. So all in all, we expect roughly 53 to 55 million tons of grains. I mean, most of that is corn, wheat, and barley. Barley and wheat already harvested. We got 19 million tons of wheat and roughly 5.5 million tons of barley. We expect corn to be less yield than it was in recent years, with average roughly 6.5 up to 7 tons per hectare yield, which should give us up to 29 million tons in harvest. Big issue with corn will be, of course, natural gas for drying. High prices for that, and of course storage, because we do not have enough storage capacity at the moment. Most farmers, they contracted the polymer bags for temporary storage, and also we expect some volumes from FAO to be provided for farmers in order to keep grains. Regarding oil seeds, so all in all, we expect this year harvest on the controlled territory of Ukraine roughly 16 million tons of oil seeds. 10 million tons of that is sunflower, roughly up to 3 million tons for soybeans, and for rapeseed we already got this figure that our farmers harvested 3 million tons of rapeseed from acreage of 1.1 million hectares, with the average yield 2.9 tons per hectare. That was quite a successful year and quite good years in terms of yield of rapeseed. Most of farmers have higher than they expected. And the yield varied from 2 tons per hectare up to 4. Some farmers even have higher tons per hectare. Of course, it highly depends on the region. So usually in Ukraine, most specialized, let's say, in rapeseed producing regions are in the west, in the south, and in the center of Ukraine. Higher yields and higher intensity in the west and central part of Ukraine, and the lower in the south, where we have not enough precipitation. Actually, we lost, because of temporal occupation this year, roughly 200,000 hectares of rapeseed, which was sown last autumn in the south, in Kherson region, in Mykolaiv region, and also in Zaporizhia region. Those three which are still under temporal occupation. So regarding actually next season, or next crop. So farmers started to seed rapeseed this year quite early. Even some started in end of July. Most of farmers still made a sowing campaign for rapeseed in August, and it's almost finished, this sowing campaign for rapeseed, and what we see that we will have roughly 1.3 million tons of 1.3 million hectares, of rapeseed. Actually, at the moment, Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine see already 1 million hectares of rapeseed sown. We heard from many farmers and from members of our associations that they switch some acreage from grains to oil seeds because of the current logistic issues. That's the biggest challenge and the biggest reason for that. Roughly 20% of increase in what was usually grown on the controlled territories in Ukraine. That's for rapeseed. That's actually due to current problems with logistics and high expense for transportation. Of course, in such situation, grains with low value per ton are losing, and we see already that plans for winter wheat and winter barley are lower than usual. Yeah, so we expect that this season, this autumn, we will have roughly 25 to 30% less acreage than it was usually on the controlled territory. So regarding numbers, yeah, usually Ukraine seeded 6.5 up to 7 million hectares of winter wheat. And now we have out of that on the controlled territory, so what was harvested, 4.7 million hectares of winter wheat, and taking into account 20-25% at least decrease in acreage, we will have roughly 3.7, even probably less, million hectares of winter wheat. So definitely less winter wheat, barley, and even rye, I think. Yeah, so rye we do not have big acreage, but still. Yeah, and in the spring, most farmers also plan to change their crop rotation and to increase share of sunflower and soybean instead of corn and some other small grains. That's also due to logistic, because still to transport from the farmer in central part of Ukraine, let's say, to European ports or to our ports, and then deduct the additional expenses, higher rates for freight, for insurance, etc. So that all in all accounts for 150, 180 dollars per ton, sometimes even more. It depends on the final destination, but still cost of logistic, cost of transportation are very high. That's why actually many farmers switch from grains to oilseeds, which have higher price per ton, and actually with them they can still have some profitability, small one, but still with almost all grains you just make losses. Regarding inputs, so with oh, by the way, there was one question regarding exports. How do we export at the moment? So with start of work of grain corridors through Odessa ports, actually we see quite a big increase, and in September we expect that this movement of grains through the seaport of Odessa will reach 3.5 million tons, and in further months it might be up to 4 million tons per month through this three Odessa seaports, and still roughly 2.5 million tons goes through railway, trucks, and Danube River to European ports. So still we expect it will be in place. Regarding rapeseed, there are a lot of trucks actually which are going with rapeseed through the western border of Ukraine and Poland and other European countries. Some goes via railway, and still big volumes goes through Danube River. So actually, transportation of rapeseed oilseeds in general, and vegetable oils, it is done in big share via road transportation. To provide you with exact numbers, let's say for September, for 19 days of September, we have further distribution of export transportation for rapeseed. 21% went via roads, 18% via railway, and via sea and Danube River, 61%. So still, sea has the biggest share, but 21% still big volumes for export of rapeseed via trucks. Regarding inputs, definitely we will have much lower input rate for fertilizers. Most expect that our consumption of fertilizers will fall to the level of 40%, which was last year. That's due to high prices, due to absence actually and physical deficit of the fertilizers, but also because of the lack of finance by Ukrainian farmers still, as where our farmers were sitting on the grains without ability to sell and to get a reasonable price. Now we still see that prices in Ukraine, internal prices, are very low, and usually for grains it's below their costs per ton. So they are not making money, and lack of finance really a big challenge for Ukrainian farmers. That's why they are not able to buy enough inputs or good quality of inputs, and we see that as a big challenge for the next year, and we expect decrease of the yields because of that, but we can't say the exact numbers or exact forecast for decrease, because still situation might change over the next months, and probably if this grain corridor will continue to work, then financial situation should improve, and probably farmers will be able to order some more fertilizers and apply them in spring. There is also a question regarding long-term agricultural productivity. So in the western and central part of Ukraine, and some south territories which are not under temporal occupation, in those regions, farmers, of course, first suffer from also financial in liquidity and lack of finance, so they will have reduction of yields, but not as much, and I think they will be able to recover when a season within one season or two. For those who are in northeast, in the eastern part of Ukraine, like in Kharkiv region, which was regained by Ukrainian forces recently, there will be definitely much longer negative impact for farmers, because of destroyed infrastructure, because of destroyed farmyards, machinery, etc., because of many fields under shelling, and there are rests of mines and missiles, etc. So it will be a long process to recover these lands and to renew production on those lands. Some of these lands will not be able to recover from that, and will need conservation for sure. It will be like tens thousands of hectares, and yeah, that will be a big issue and loss for Ukraine. But still, we hope that this acreage, the share of acreage, will not be as big, and we will be able to regain all the other temporarily occupied territories by Russian soldiers. Okay, there is a question about this pipeline initiative to export vegetable oils through pipeline from Ukraine to Poland, to Polish seaport in Gdansk. Actually, it is at the moment doubtful project, so we also heard about that. That there is a memorandum between Ministry of Agriculture of Ukraine and Poland. It should go through the technical assessment whether it is possible and whether it is economically viable, and only after that it might be as a project. We actually support any increase of capacity for logistics and transportation through the western border of Ukraine to European countries, because still risks of further blockade of our seaports is pretty high. So we definitely need to diversify routes, and it also might help. But still, first we need to get a conclusion from technical specialists, and also in terms of economical efficiency of such project. Yeah, so basically I think that most topics and most questions I have covered within this small video. At the end, I want to thank you for your interest in agriculture of Ukraine and what is going on here. Want to thank for support, big support from UK for Ukraine within current war situation. Yeah, and we hope that Ukraine will win quite soon, and we will come to peace, and will start to recover from this horrible times, and will bring further agriculture and food security in this world. Thanks.
So we are going to just move on to Anthony, who's going to go over his slides, and then hopefully we can get Roman back on for you.
That's great. Thank you, Izzy. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Anthony Spade. I'm an analyst at the AHDB in the arable market intelligence. In this presentation, I'm going to talk all things rapeseed markets, how this war between Russia and Ukraine has impacted markets, and look at the outlooks going forward. Could we have the next slide, please, Christian? Thank you. So what will we be discussing this evening? To start with, we'll be looking at what's been driving rapeseed markets, and then we will be looking at notably at Ukrainian exports, explaining their significance to the global market. From this, we'll be then talking about rapeseed prices globally and what has happened to prices in this crisis. I'm then going to focus on the UK and why the Ukraine, or at least its rapeseed contribution to the global S&D, is important to the UK. And the second half of this presentation, I'm going to turn towards more of a global outlook for rapeseed, looking at the major producers for this marketing year and what our stocks to use is going to be globally, and then touching up at the end towards soybean markets and why they are more important for this marketing year. So if we could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So how has this war impacted global markets? Hopefully these two visuals here put into perspective how this war has impacted global vegetable oil markets and oilseed markets. So Ukraine and Russia account for over 50% of sun oil production, and they account for 74% of sun oil exports. This is based on 5-year averages. And as you can see on the visual on the right, sun oil has an 11% market share of all major oils produced, so out of palm, soy, and rape. So that's 180 million tons. They've got an 11% market share of that. So with Ukraine and Russia both being a large producer and exporter of this sun oil, if you remove that from this global S&D of oils, it does have a significant impact on prices. Could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So as we can see here, this is there a next to it as well? Oh no, oh, so it should have been a title of there saying nearby Paris rapeseed futures. So this is nearby Paris rapeseed futures in pounds. So we have seen large support for Paris rapeseed. This is fed into our domestic markets because this contract is a domestic benchmark for rapeseed prices. I don't need to point out exactly where this conflict between Ukraine and Russia started, but it is noted on the graph, and you can see that rapeseed prices take off at this point. With Ukraine and Russia being large suppliers of oilseeds, this is the market effectively pricing in exports not leaving the country as Russia invaded. But as we go on, we can see prices have started to subdue in the recent couple of months. This has been from the UN brokered agreement, which allowed foodstuffs to start leaving the Black Sea from Ukraine from the start of August. So actually, interestingly, as of today, 185 ships have left Ukrainian ports carrying 4.2 million metric tons of grain and other foodstuffs. But despite all of this, prices are remaining volatile and they are remaining historically high currently. And as we can see here, Paris rapeseed futures are above the 500 ton per pound mark. Delivered prices into Erith last Friday were just over 500 pounds as well. So we still do have historically high prices despite the brokered deal. So if we have the next slide, please. So I just want to discuss upon what this could all mean for the UK. So net consumption for the UK is around 2 million tons of rapeseed. So this is taking into account our domestic production, our net imports and exports of physical rapeseed, and the seed equivalent of rape oil and meal. And as we can see on the graph on the left here, we stand at around 2 million tons every single year. So over the last few years, as many of you all know, we've had declines to our rapeseed area of pest pressure, from the cabbage stem flea beetle, which means we are now a net importer of rapeseed, and this is going to be continuing into this marketing year as well. So even if we take the AHDB's latest harvest report, the yields from this report, and put it against our planting variety survey, we are looking at around a 1.1 to 1.2 million ton crop that has just been harvested. But the final DEFRA June survey will be out this December with those figures exactly. So from this, we know we're going to need to import for this marketing year. So if we can have the next slide, please. So Ukraine has stepped up to be a big supplier to the UK's demand from around 2019, as the HMRC data shows here on the left. and that's been with the EU as well. So we've gone from being a net exporter to a net importer. So sowing for so the Ukrainian production at the moment wasn't compromised, as a lot of Ukrainian rapeseed is winter sown, so it would have been sown at the back end of 2021. So the actual physical crop for this marketing year isn't compromised. But what will be a watch point, and hopefully if we have our other speakers in a moment, is what could happen for 2023 production. So with the UN broker deal, as I mentioned, in place, they've got the physical crop, but it's actually getting it out, which they haven't been able to do since the start of August. But since goods have started leaving the Black Sea from Ukraine, nearly 250,000 tons of rapeseed has been exported, mainly going to France, Netherlands, Belgium, Germany, and Romania. So usually Ukraine front loads their rapeseed exports, mainly exporting most or if not all of their stuff to the EU and the UK. But this has been impacted recently, but we are seeing goods start to leave now. So HMRC data, we've only got July for this marketing year. We've currently sourced 25,000 tons of rapeseed, which has come from notably from France, Belgium, and Spain. If the UK doesn't get hold of or doesn't have a Ukrainian origin, then we will probably be sourcing most of our origin from the EU or Australia. If we could have the next slide, please. So I now want to talk more globally about rapeseed. And as I mentioned, Ukraine's production has not been impacted too much for this coming marketing year, so the harvest they've just had, but questions do remain for next year. But as we can see here on the graph, global production for the major producers is looking to improve year on year. So this is mainly from an improved Canadian crop. So last year, Canada had a massive drought, which significantly impacted their crop. It was just under 14 million tons. And this year, they're going to produce nearly 20 million tons. Also, we're seeing growth to the European crop, which to some extent escaped the heat. They did have a drought in Europe, but they did have a drought which had impacts on their spring cropping, but their oilseed rape crop production is looking promising. And Australia as well, they aren't producing, last year was a bumper crop, but they are going to produce the second biggest crop. This is from the last couple of years of La Nina weather in the South Pacific, which has brought much needed precipitation and moisture to Australia, which has allowed their production of both grains and oilseeds to improve over the last couple of years. So with this increased production, as we can see on the graph on the right, global rapeseed stocks to use is going to increase for this marketing year. So we can see it went significantly down last year, and now we're gonna see that come up off the revival of improved crops. If we have the next slide, please. So effectively, with this large Canadian crop coming on, combined with the current brokered UN deal, rapeseed premiums have been reducing over the last few months. And the price ratio to, so the inelastic demand for rapeseed last year meant that the premium went very high. We've seen the Canadian crop come back online, and we've seen prices subdue, and the pricing ratio to soybeans is comparable to years before the Canadian drought in 2021-22, as we can see here. So far for this marketing year, the pricing ratio between rapeseed and soybeans is at about 1.14. If we could have the next slide, please. So that, to some extent, means that soybeans, again, are going to be a large driver of rapeseed prices and sentiment for this current marketing year. So this is why the focus turns to soybeans more now, with these major rapeseed producers' production improving year on year. So global stocks to use ratios are going to increase for soybeans for this marketing year. This is despite the USDA last week revising down the US soybean production slightly. So currently, at the moment, US harvest is in focus for soybeans. A large crop is expected, quite similar to last year. Rains over the coming month will be a watch point to whether this will delay harvest or not. It is slightly behind analyst expectations at the moment, which has been supporting the market ever so slightly. If I turn everyone's attention towards South America, so there's a record soybean crop expected in Brazil. First new crop estimates are coming out from a lot. Agro, USDA, and CONAB are coming up around the 150 million ton mark. So this is up from around 125 million tons that Brazil produced last year. Plantings have just started in the Mato Grosso region of Brazil on irrigated soils. In the coming months, focus will start to turn to these South American crops as they start planting their soybean crops and making sure there are ongoing rains. But if not, and if there isn't a large weather story within this South American region, so there is an advisory for La Nina at the moment, which can bring dryness. But if there isn't a weather story, we could see soybeans start to weigh on the market going forward. And what I've mentioned previously is for rapeseed, them having a closer link to soybeans means it could potentially weigh on rapeseed prices too. If we have the next slide, please. And just to conclude, before, I'm not sure if we're going to questions now at the end, but just before we conclude, so sunflower oil has been a driver of markets. Obviously, we're taking that 11% out of those major oils. It does have a big impact on things. Ukraine, they hold a large majority of the market share, which has fed into support for rapeseed prices, but have since come down slightly. Domestically, we're still going to be in a deficit. We don't produce enough rapeseed to fulfill our demand. We'll be relying on EU and Ukrainian and Australian rapeseed. So the export corridor will be a watch point, and there is large volatility at the moment, as I mentioned earlier, especially today with news coming out from Russia that they're holding referendums in regions in Ukraine on whether they should be part of Russia, which has questioned whether the export corridor will carry on. So stuff like this will be a watch point and will add to volatility. And soybean markets are a watch point for 2022-23. So last year, inelastic demand for rapeseed led to a high premium. We're seeing rapeseed production improve year on year. We're going to see rapeseed prices trade closer to soybeans, and South America will be the big watch point at the end of 2022, especially if there is not a weather story. We could see a bear on the market because of this. Thank you very much. Well, I forgot to mention, yeah, we have our supply and demand estimates and our market analysis from the AHDB that anyone can feel free to sign up for. We do a market report on Monday and grain market dailies throughout the week, and prices as well for delivered grains. I believe, as you were saying, if people want to put their email in the chat, we can get them signed up to our outputs if they wish.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anthony. But we are going to move on to Duncan next, and hopefully we'll be able to get through to him soon. So obviously our final speaker of the night, Duncan Farrington. He's fourth generation farmer and founder of Farrington's Mellow Yellow. Duncan is a huge advocate for caring for the environment, and he enriched farms, and he's hoped to relay this passion into his business. So I'm going to pass this on to Duncan to talk about how the conflict in Ukraine has affected his rapeseed processing business and his farm. Oh, can't hear you, Duncan.
Still no joy, but
there
hopefully. Oh. Sorry, that was me, Christian, here speaking. Still nothing currently. Oh, it's just, yeah, try the same method as before. Hopefully this should work in a second.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Yep. Oh,
You
good.
can. Thank you. It's been an evening of technical issues, I'm afraid, hasn't it? Anyway, I'll start again. Thank you very much, Isabel, and thank you for inviting me. I'm going to try and comment a little bit on how the Ukrainian terrible situation there is affecting us as both a farmer, grower, and a producer of rapeseed oil, and sort of tie that in with consumer and brand focus. So if I can have the next slide, please. So yes, I'm Duncan Farrington, Managing Director of Farrington Oils, and we produce the brand of Farrington's Mellow Yellow cold pressed rapeseed oil. And we were the original farm to bottle producer of rapeseed oil in Britain. We sort of started a whole sector, and it's now a thriving sector in the consumer market, on supermarket shelves and in restaurants throughout the land. And people over the last 18 plus years have started using rapeseed and cold pressed rapeseed oil as one of their key ingredients in their diets. And from the oil, we make a range of dressings and other flavored oils as well. And it's been very important to us as a brand that as well as being a farm processor, that we try and uphold high sustainable provenance, and we grow to, if you can go to the next slide, please. We grow to leaf mark standards, which I'll come to, but also I just want to show you here that how even in these times of heightened prices and worries about increased costs of living, people still are actively looking for brands and foods that and general consumerism that has good eco credentials. Now this slide, it is a couple of years old now, but on there it shows how in just small ways is 24% of consumers in 2020 were eco-actives. So these are people that are actually hunting out products that have good sustainable credentials. But then nearly half the people, 42% of people, were actually considering it. So they are aware of it. So no matter what we hear in the media about people say when you interview them on just as they're going into a supermarket, how they're all full of great ideas about buying wholesome, sustainable products, and then you look at their shopping trolley afterwards and it doesn't always tie in, but people are very much more aware of it. So each year it's becoming more and more present, and people are looking down that. And if I can have the next slide, please. So as I said, we grow to leaf mark protocols, so linking environment and farming, and I'm been very passionate advocate of this organisation since its inception. And it looks at you've got the diagram of the leaf wheel there, and it's sort of like a bicycle wheel with all the different spokes going out, looking at everything from how we manage our soils to growing our crops to looking after our water resources and the wider wildlife areas around, and everything comes together, and it is all, as it says, it is all integrated. And Leaf as an organisation, they primarily first started off as working with farmers, but then it's linking the farmers higher up the food chain, literally, so to the food industry in general and to retailers and consumers. And it's a joined up approach. And as Leaf now at 31 years old, I think it's sort of the main retailers in the country are now backing Leaf Mark food. And us as a brand, we've taken that further. So not only were we the first Leaf Mark producer of rapeseed oil in the country, we've then looked further, and now we've done our carbon footprinting, and we became the world's first food brand to be both certified as carbon and plastic neutral. And then last year, or 2021, we got a Queen's Award for sustainability. So we're very proud of what we're doing, but why are we doing that? Well, to be blatantly obvious, one is because we believe in it as a brand, and I think it is the right thing to do. But two, because it does help sales, as that previous slide showed. people are not only asking, but people are actively looking for products that meet those criteria. So if we can go on to the next slide, please. And as a farmer, and certainly in the UK, and although we're successful at selling and making bottles of Mellow Yellow, sometimes I do wonder, because I can't always grow a good crop, and it is a high risk crop. And at the moment, we've got this next year's crop is planted, and I'm desperate for some moisture here in Northamptonshire. We've had very little moisture since we've planted it. The cabbage stem flea beetle are out there nibbling away at it. There aren't many slugs at the moment because it's too dry, but no doubt the slugs will come along when it rains, and then over the winter there'll be pigeons, and then if you can get through all of that, just before harvest is a risk of it shedding its seeds if you have a pre-harvest thunderstorm or hailstorm. So it is a high-risk crop, and as Anthony's just been saying, you know, that because of all those factors, the UK area and yields of rapeseed have gone down over the last few years. But saying that, if you can get it right, it is an extremely good break crop, and it gives a fantastic financial return. So I think as growers, we just need to sort of find better ways of growing it, and with help from the seed breeding companies and more knowledge on looking after our soils and the nutrition, try and get it right. And then if we can get our area of rapeseed and successful area of rapeseed up, we can start becoming self-sufficient again. But moving on to the next slide. So once we've grown the crop, on our farm, we only produce around 10% of the rapeseed we need for Farrington oils, and the rest of it we buy in. And whether I buy it off myself, because on one side of the business we're a farm and I'm a partner in the family farming partnership, and on the other side I'm a food manufacturer and processor and the director of that business. So the price of rapeseed dictates what we have to buy it for. So we, like everyone else, we would sell our crop, and we would, as a food processor, we would buy the crop. So 10% of our crop is from our own production, but the rest we buy off people or off other growers that we work with closely, and they supply us leaf mark rapeseed, and we have good contracts with them and pay them a bonus for growing for us, and work very successfully and closely together. But I've got this graph here to show how the price has been going up over the last 12 or 18 months. So if you go right back to sort of the beginning of 2021, rapeseed was about, say, 350 to nearly 400 pounds a ton. And then as we went through last year, Anthony spoke about the Canadian droughts there, and that hugely affected the price of rapeseed going forward at the end of 2021 and into the start of 2022. And I can remember we were, you know, growers were phoning me up and sort of offering us seed at sort of 500, 550 pounds a ton. And these were figures we had never seen before. And it became, you know, a little bit worrying as a producer of a food product and a brand, that how we were going to cope with that. But then the second week of February, Russia invades Ukraine, and that's where the steep line goes upwards. And over the next 4 months, the rate went from 500 to 600 to 700. And the most expensive load of rapeseed I bought, just one load, thankfully, was something like 876 pounds per ton. And by the time you add the bonuses and on there, we were paying nearer £1,000 a ton. So it was an incredibly scary ride. But I just want to show you the next slide, because it's not just the price of the rapeseed that dictates our overall costs, but also conversely, it's the price of the rape meal. So whilst we are making a bottle of oil, and I have a bottle here to hand, for every one of these bottles of oil is 2 more bottle equivalents of rape meal. So in other words, of the seed we buy, 1/3 of it goes into oil that we put in a glass bottle and sell to our customers, and 2/3 of it becomes the co-product, which is rape meal. And the price of rape meal was tracking the price of rapeseed. So again, you can see that steep rise in February up to sort of the middle or end of May. Actually, if you put the two together, you might argue that the price increase it's certainly diluted. But again, it's not necessarily that simple, because we might be buying rapeseed on agreed prices in 1 month, and we might be storing it, or the farmers that we buy off might want to lock their price 6 months ahead. And then on the day that we actually take delivery and we crush the seed, the price of the rape meal may be completely different. And this is something that's happening at the moment, because after we got to sort of May time and into June, the price of rapeseed started declining, and it's already back to the area it was this time 12 months ago. But if I bought the rapeseed at a high price 4 or 5 months ago, and we're selling the meal at a low price, this has a huge knock-on effect to the economics of how we do our business. And also, not just that, but again, if you take a bottle of oil, and it doesn't matter whether it's rapeseed oil or other oils or other food products that may be for sale in national supermarkets, but due to the war in Ukraine and the increase in energy prices from the hike in gas prices, the biggest cost increase we have apart from the oil is actually the glass bottle there. The glass so far for us has gone up 20% in cost, and at the moment that could continue going up. Our electricity in the factory, the electricity use has increased in price by about 50% so far, and obviously the government have made announcements in the last couple of days, and we'll start seeing how that has knock-on effects. And then also before the war in Ukraine, we've had several shocks over the last 3 or 4 years, because we had COVID only sort of the last couple of years, and it turned out during coronavirus, people were doing their shopping from home, whether it's online food shopping or just general shopping of clothes and other items, and that had a knock-on effect for the supply and the demand for cardboard products. And we use cardboard trays to package our bottles in, and the price of cardboard as well has shot up. So what we have found as a brand, and a small brand in a domestic market, it's very much the international politics that are affecting what we do here on our farm in Northamptonshire. And so it is the cost of the oil, the cost of the raw ingredients, or the packaging products rather, the cost of the energy to produce it, and we're putting all of this together. And then what it's had the ultimate effect is this year, for the first time in our history, we had to go to all of our customers, and in August we had to put the price up, which is never an easy conversation to do. But what we did find, that all of our customers, whether they be restaurants or supermarkets or the local farm shop or wholesalers, they obviously are having price increases across the board as well, with their energy, electricity, transport and the products. And thankfully we've all worked together to try and mitigate these prices as much as possible, but everyone knows that unfortunately inflation is with us, and the prices of our product has gone up. So I think I've got one more slide after this, and yes, it is just the thank you slide, but I think that's all I've got to say on that, Isabel. But I mean, obviously happy to take any questions and take it from there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Duncan. It's really impressive that you're probably one of the first organisations to produce a carbon and plastic neutral product. There is just a question through about can you explain further about what plastic neutral means?
Yeah, certainly. So we have a glass bottle here, but the label on it is plastic, and inside, this is an oil pourer cap. Inside there is a plastic oil pourer. So plastic in itself is not a bad product. It's just what people do with the plastic after they've used it. And there's this term of single-use plastic. Well, actually, plastic is energy, and it's made from oil. So what we do, we work with an organisation, and we have to weigh all of the plastic that we use in our business throughout the year. So we weigh the total amount of the weight of the labels and the caps in our bottles, and also we use a lot of shrink wrap to wrap our pallets before we send them out to customers. And we use 6 tons of plastic. So for a small company, 6 tons of plastic doesn't sound much, but I suppose it's an awful lot of plastic. And then what we've done is we are paying basically a voluntary tax on that plastic, and it's to repurpose it. And the idea is it's to try and stop plastic that is destined to go into the environment and ultimately into the oceans, where it causes lots of harm from plankton right up to big fish and seabirds. And it's to we're funding a project which has fishermen in Hyderabad in India. Our project is linked to, as it happens, and they are collecting the waste plastic from the oceans, and they get paid because it then gives that plastic of value, because it can be recycled and repurposed and reused. So it's not that we're plastic free, it's just that we're repurposing it. And I'll just show you one example. We hosted a trade show here a couple of years ago, and we had a debate from someone from Greenpeace and someone that actually made plastic labels. And the debate is, well, why don't you use a paper label or a biodegradable label? Well, they all come from products that have to be made. And he said plastic is not a bad product, but he said you might find lots of, well, hopefully not lots of these on ocean floors, but we all, have seen discarded crisp packets and fizzy drinks, water bottles and the like. But he said, I've never seen one of these on an ocean floor yet. And it's because that has a perceived value, and that's plastic. So what we're trying to do is turn that into a value once it's been used.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've got another question as well. Do you have any renewables on the farm in order to try and mitigate your energy costs?
Absolutely, good question. We do have solar panels. When we first put them in, they were providing about 50% of the total energy for the factory. And as the factory's grown off over the last 3 or 4 years, they're now providing around 1/3 of our energy. I would like to put more up, but we're in a rural location, and a lot of farmers would have this same problem. We're at the end of an electricity line, so it's not the space on our factory roof that's the limiting factor. It's the amount that the electricity board will let us put on the roof, because if the sun is shining and we aren't using the electricity, they don't want it to sort of melt the wires going back into the village. So yes, we do use renewables.
Yeah, I've got another question. Sorry to bombard you with questions, Duncan, but just encourage everyone else still listening. If you do have any questions, just type them in the question box and we'll answer them as we go along. Do you only buy rapeseed from certified leaf growers? And if so, if your oil demand went up, do you feel like you have enough growers to supply your business?
Yes, so we do only buy from leaf certified growers, and when I first started to need to buy rapeseed in, it was a little bit of a problem, because one, I hadn't got a trading history, and obviously people were nervous that we would actually pay them, so we made sure we paid people within 2 weeks rather than the usual 28 days, and we pay them a bonus. But now we actually had a grower day this year just before harvest, where we got all our growers around the table from, and we have them from a geographically spread area, which I think with cabbage stem flea beetle and water shortages, that's a good risk management perspective. And it's fascinating that when we had people around, showed them around the factory, and we went through a few technical details that we want our growers to consider when they are doing their leaf mark rapeseed for us. But those farmers, the information flow between everyone, it was brilliant, and it really filled me with confidence that we got some great growers, and hopefully they went away feeling buoyed up as well. So if we suddenly have an increase in demand for more rapeseed, I would hope we can increase either the number of growers, or I know a couple of the growers, we aren't buying all of their seed off them, so there's still some room for growth there.
And how is your rape crop looking, Duncan? Your own rape crop?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, drop me in it. So actually, one of my growers today in North Lincolnshire, who we're just coming to the end of our crop that's going through the presses as we speak. So next week we'll do a seed changeover from our next grower. This one's in North Lincolnshire, and he sent me an email, and he's fixed the price for you know, some of his seed that we're buying, and he says, I think I need to get some sheep to graze my rapeseed here. It's that good. And I said, well, the flea beetle are doing a good job. We don't need any sheep on ours. So we're desperate for some rain. It's there, but I wish it was a little bit better. So it's not great at the moment, but hope there's a long way to go. So hopefully it will come.
Yeah, I think that's general consensus across the board. I think I've seen some incredible looking crops, and like you said, the biggest sort of phrase on Twitter, they roll the dice and they try and get the good weather window. But a few people have seen some very good crops. But like you said, the flea beetle pressure seems to be quite high this year, and I don't think the drought has helped it much. There are some few questions, but I'll just pass to Anthony, and then we can go back to you, Duncan, if that's okay.
Yeah, actually, before I start on the question, I've got a question myself for Duncan. Are you seeing these high prices that we've got now and we've had for the last year bring more people back to sowing OSR for 23 harvest, so the people that you deal with? And do you have an indicative figure of the increase, or is it mixed depending on people's risk appetite for growing the crop?
I think it is mixed depending where you are geographically. So as I say, we're in Northamptonshire, and we've got a couple of growers a little bit south of us, not that far, but it's getting more risky for them. And there's one of my growers I was talking to just as we were planting our seed in around the 20th of August. And at that stage, we'd had some rain and thought we could go, and he hadn't. And he was of the opinion, well, unless it rains, I'm not going to plant some. So I'm not sure how they're getting on. But then those growers further north, we have one grower that pulled out a rapeseed for a year, and now they're back in growing it. And I certainly think, you know, if the price is £500 a tonne compared to £350 a tonne, it certainly does make people look at it again. I know if certainly 2 years ago, if I didn't have an oil business, I can absolutely see the logic of why you would want to take a holiday from growing it. But then if we only grow cereals and oats and beet, you know, everyone says we ought to grow more proteins in this country. But if you start growing too many proteins close in the rotation, you start getting P. cyst nematodes, and everything has a risk to it. So I think the high prices have allowed people to reevaluate and come back into the market. What's my gut feeling? How much has it increased? We're probably in our growers alone. I suppose the overall effect is it's at least 20% more in the ground this year than it was 18 months ago, I'd say.
Okay. And are you finding yields for the harvest just gone have been better on averages or around average?
I'd say average. Our neighbours, I think, had good average yields. Mine, we had a 20-hectare plot next to a town, and it wasn't the flea beetle or the slugs that got it. It looked fantastic in November. It was the pigeons that came, every pigeon in the county. And when you're next to a town, you can't put gas guns out. And you would have thought all the motorbikes and dog walkers across the field would scare the pigeons, but the pigeons weren't bothered. And we had the chap shooting them. Some days he'd get 80 pigeons, but he could only do it at the weekends. But the pigeons seemed to decide, actually, let's go and eat it in the week. So, yeah. So my yield was embarrassingly average.
Those pesky pigeons are. Thanks for that, Duncan. Moving on, we've got some questions here. Simon, it's asked, where is rapeseed grown in Ukraine? Well, Simon just actually had a quick look at the crop map for Ukraine. It's actually grown all over the country. A lot of it's grown in the western part of Ukraine, though, so towards Europe and away from Russia. But looking at the map, it's mostly grown everywhere. Next question, is there lots of Ukrainian rapeseed leaving by land routes? So obviously when Russia decided to invade Ukraine, exports stopped from Ukraine out of the Black Sea. We did see grains starting to leave Ukraine via rail. I do not have a quantitative figure on that, but I would have thought maybe more grain, maize, or wheat or barley would have left in the period between February and August, because as I mentioned in my presentation, Ukrainian exports are front-loaded, so they would have already exported their crop for the marketing year. So I wouldn't have thought much had left by land, but as I mentioned, 250,000 tons have left in around 6 weeks from Ukraine, all destined for Europe. Next question, are UK crushers running at full capacity? Well, as we, I think this also coincides with another question. Do we see any more larger crushing plants closing in the UK? As you know, we've got Hull has been in consultation for closing this December, which will obviously take out crushing capacity out of the UK crushing ability. Obviously, I think some of this has been because of the economics around obviously our production dropping off over the last few years, and importing it, crushing it, and then exporting it probably hasn't stacked up economically. As far as UK crushers running at full capacity, I can't say I have explicit insight into that, but I would assume to some extent margins have been good to allow crushing. Okay. Next question, we got Alex Cook. Do you have any article advice for selling my crop forward using futures for rapeseed? Yes, actually, Alex, we do on the AHDB website. We do have price risk management tools. So looking at the use of options on hedging yourself with options on futures contracts, and depending on your appetite for risk and depending on where you think the market going, you can use these options to bring an income into your farm. But we have all of that on the AHDB website. As far as questions go, I think that's it from my side. Isabel, if you've got any more.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. There are just a few questions coming through again, back for Duncan. Do you grow specific varieties for the crusher, or could you grow double low varieties? Is there something that affects the taste of the oil in the choice of varieties you use?
Again, another good question. My biggest concern ever since starting the business is, does it taste any good? Does the seed in a particular year taste any good? And luckily we haven't had a bad tasting one this year. Of course, I'm going to say it's absolutely fantastic what we've just started crushing from last harvest, because it was so hot. It really is a lovely flavour. But as far as varieties go, and they are all double low varieties, so obviously not high uric acid varieties, but as far as rapeseed double low varieties go, they are all bred for an oil content, because that's what the breeders have been charged to do for the last 30-40 years. And because rapeseed is an annual crop and it also cross-pollinates about 30% each year, the rapeseed varieties break down over time or quite quickly compared to, say, a malting barley. Growers may use the same malting barley variety for many years, but rapeseed, after 3 or 4 years, you tend to move on and change varieties. So because of that, there isn't a single variety we use, but what we do is before we crush any rapeseed, whether it's ours or our growers, we go and we sample the heaps. We bring sort of a 10 kilogram sample back to the factory and do test presses on it just to check that, does it taste good? And we have one year with one grower, there was some that had some technical difficulties with it, and we couldn't use it. So the short answer, the variety doesn't matter as long as it's a low, double low variety, and it's been grown in clean conditions. It's all, and it's been harvested correctly and stored correctly. Is no reason why it's not going to taste good.
So are your moisture and temperature limits the same as a sort of commercial crop going into stores?
No.
No.
I'm not. I don't want to expand on that, but
Yeah.
we have protocols, and again, so it's not just the growing and the storing. It's also how you press it, the types of presses we use. But actually, yes, it does make a difference. So we do have a protocol with our growers on temperatures and moistures. That they would be what key elements of things to consider.
And how have you got supermarkets to buy into stocking your products? And how have you generally got on with supermarkets? I think I mean, oilseed rape products, there's a lot of health benefits surrounding them compared to sunflower oil or olive oil. Do our producers and retailers working together more on trying to promote this to consumers, and also, like you said, on the side of your environmental, carbon neutral, plastic neutral, has that been quite a draw for supermarkets when you've approached them to stock them?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the day, all supermarkets, whether it's a great big supermarket or your local farm shop, all retailers want to sell a product, so they will stock anything that they think will sell. And it is my job, when I first started, it is literally getting on the phone and phoning people up and trying to get meetings with people. And it's not easy. You learn very, very quickly. And I'm sure there's no doubt some supermarket delegates in the audience, and they'll be on the other side. But we work very closely with them. If we can get time in front of a supermarket buyer, it's gold dust. But yes, we've got to make sure our brand differentiates itself from other brands. So, what's the packaging look like, first of all, because you buy with your eyes initially, and then the product inside, it has to taste good and it has to perform well. And as you've mentioned, it has these wonderful health credentials. It has half the saturated fat of olive oil. Sunflower oil has no omega-3, whereas rapeseed oil is absolutely packed with omega-3, and that's what we need to reduce cholesterol in our diets. It has a high temperature, so you can use it for home cooking and roast potatoes, and Michelin-starred chefs throughout the country use it in their restaurants. So it has lots of great things with it, but then behind all of that are those sustainable credentials. And because it is leaf mark, it's not me saying, obviously I'm going to say my product's great, but when we are independently audited, and then when I've been looking at my soils on our farm and testing the carbon content for over 20 years, and before it was trendy and anyone knew anything about carbon footprinting, and I thought, I don't know where this will go, but it intrigues me. And then sort of in the last 5 years, everyone's been talking about carbon and carbon footprinting. So we did the figures just to see where we sat as a business. And then we worked with an organization certified by the United Nations, because if we could prove we were carbon neutral, or if we can go on a journey to becoming carbon neutral, we want to work with a certified organization, and obviously the United Nations is the one, because they're setting the targets, and that's what we've done. And we managed to make ourselves carbon neutral. So all of that really, really helps. And if I'd have gone to a supermarket buyer 7 years ago and said, we're wonderful, we're working towards carbon neutrality and we're leaf marked and I've got the best tasting product ever, the conversation would soon turn into how much it is, and they would want it cheaper. Whereas now, if you go to a supermarket buyer, they generally want to ask all about the sustainable credentials, because they know obviously you're going to work on the price. They know obviously the packaging and the delivery and the product's going to taste good, but they really, really are absolutely interested in those eco credentials that we're very much at the forefront of.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear your sort of conversations you're having with retailers, and how they're also on the side of trying to reduce the impact that all of our processes has on the environment. There's just another question here to Anthony. I don't know if this would be better suited for Roman, but Ukraine has proposed to build a pipeline to export 2 million metric tons of sun oil from Ukraine to the EU seaport. Do you think that is viable?
Yeah, I just thought that question as well. Well, we transport energy via pipelines and all that sort of stuff across continents, so I don't see why not. I have seen there has been proposals, but yeah, I don't see how that couldn't be viable. But I would question if it's economically viable, especially with at the moment being allowed to export out of the Black Sea.
Yeah,
I mean, no one knows geopolitically what's going to happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years between the West and Russia, and how this will impact food security.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Thanks for trying to clear up. I think I could probably ask that to Roman tomorrow, but next slide, please, Christian. And as mentioned earlier, the recording will be available on YouTube, and we'll be able to send them to you through email. Keeping with the theme of the World Study Tour, the next webinar is on the 5th of October, and that's with Philip Dolber, and it is with Australian versus UK production and marketing. And the topic in question is risk and grain marketing strategy. And the webinar will look at whether the principles of risk management and marketing are the same around the world, or is this just a mindset? And I'm sure we can all agree that the risk management and marketing has been a topic that has been importance has been especially highlighted this year. These webinars will be running once a month through till April. Next slide, please, Christian. And then also just to highlight is the Strategic Cereal Farm Results Month. So this is coming up and will be starting in November, from the 9th of November to the 30th of November. And it will be highlighting the latest results from on-farm trials and research projects, and will be presented by our strategic farmers, industry experts, and some of your knowledge exchange managers. Just to sort of tease you with some of the trials we're going to be talking about: cover crop destruction, direct drilling spring barley, and foliar versus conventional nitrogen trials, which as I can imagine will have a lot of interest. So there'll be emails going out through this to your inboxes soon, so hopefully we can see you all there again. But thank you all for joining us tonight. Sorry about the technical difficulties again. We'll try to sort that out and set up a private Q&A with Roman. So as I said again, any questions, please send them through to me, and I will get that uploaded to the YouTube channel and sent to emails. Thank you again, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, Anthony. Good night. Thank you.